leave that off screen. Okay, I'm gonna start with just the very beginning of what I do on a project. I'm gonna start a new project, call it project setup tutorial. And I already shot some footage on the X-T3, 4K 60 in F-Log. I go over here to, first I'll go to my settings. I shot it in 4K, but when I set up to edit, I leave it in 1920 by 1080, and I edit everything in that, and then at the end, before I export, I'll come back and I'll change my project and timeline resolution to 4K. It just edits a whole lot faster in 1080, and then when you set it to 4K, it just uses the whole clip. So I'll leave it there. You can use 24. I prefer 2397. I'm not going to worry about proxy media. I'm not going to worry about optimized. If I needed optimized media, I usually set this to DNxHRLB. I'll do this if I'm using B-RAW from the Blackmagic, and I set this to 2 seconds, so it caches a lot faster if I need to set up or use optimized media. Sometimes I'll do proxy media resolution or proxy media format. I'll change that to H.265. If I have to create proxy media and send off to an editor, I create it in H.265. And then here you can set your proxy generation to whatever folder you want, and the cache files, I leave that. But again, that's all for the Blackmagic workflow. Again, for Blackmagic, I'll come over to color management, change this to YRGB color managed, change that to HDR. I don't think that's going to make a difference with the Fujifilm. Let's find out. I'll leave that there. The main things to set up are going to be here, where you set up your timeline to 23 instead of the 60. We'll save that, come over here and create my first bin, call it footage, and then let me see. Let's go to, I have it on my desktop, so desktop, resolve tutorial, here's all the F-Log footage, and I'll click and drag that into here. Change project frame rate, no, don't change. And I'll select all of it, go to clip attributes, and I drop this to my timeline settings. So if you use 23, great. If you do 24, great. If you do 30, great. Whatever. Just set it to whatever your timeline is, and hit OK. And of course, normally I'll bring music in if I'm editing something to music, but I'm not doing that right now. First clip, timeline. Normally I'll call it the address of the house. We'll make this up. Okay, there we go. I'll bring this out to the master. And normally when I do this, I'll create another bin and call it drone, put my drone footage in there. I'll create another bin for the sound effects, and I'll put the music in with the sound effects and stuff. So let's open this timeline. Don't want the audio because I'll put music there. I didn't do any drone work, so we'll just leave that, but I'll find the best part of this clip. So and I shot all of this handheld, so don't judge it too hard. And when I play it back on my timeline, it's already super slow because I set it, I shot it in 60, but when I went to clip attributes, I set it to play at 23, and it matches my timeline, so it looks clean on here. So I'll do that. Where's the next best part of this clip? I'll set my in there, out there, and I'll just pull the clip down. Let's throw a detail shot in from there to there. Throw another detail shot in there. Normally, again, I have music and I'm matching all of this to the music while I'm editing. I use the music as the foundation, and I match everything to that for the mood. I'll set that there. From there to there. Now that's all outside. I've done detail stuff. Okay, let's pretend that's going inside or something fun. And then here's inside shot. Another detail shot of my gear case. All right, so we've got everything down here. It's all playing about the same. Since I shot this handheld, I don't know how well it'll stabilize, but I'll go over here and I change this to similarity, and I start with stabilize. Go to bed, son. Don't come out again until I tell you it's time to get up, please. Okay, that was my 4-year-old. So even with that first stabilizing, it's kind of wonky up there, so I can drop the strength a little bit, bump up the smooth a little bit. When you drop the strength, it gets rid of some of the weird warp stuff that goes on. And if this was on a gimbal, there would be 0 issues here. It'd be buttery smooth. But that's how I stabilize. Do this one, and I stabilize almost every single clip. That one's pretty good. This one we'll try with translation. Translation works with if you get the bump that's like an up and down. Similarity works really well with almost everything else. Translation is the only thing I found that works well with like a bobbing walk or something. So I'll leave that as stabilize at similarity. Again, similarity. Okay, great. Beautiful. Beautiful. Whatever, it's all handheld. Again, I would do all of this on a gimbal normally. Drop that. Okay, so I've edited all of this. Good. Let's go over to color grading. On the exterior, let's apply the Fujifilm to Eternalight. Bump up the shadows a bit. Actually, that's a little bit too much. Let's do I don't know what just happened there, but we'll start with a new node. That's to wide gamut. We'll see what that looks like. And we'll drop the highlights a bit, we'll bump up the shadows a bit, add a little contrast. I shot this with the sharpness down at -1. I'll add a little bit of sharpness back in here. I wish my toolbar would move away. I'm gonna go full screen on that, there we go. Add my saturation. My highlights down again. For color grading, I usually like to not go too much above 896 with my colors if I can. The sky, the blue oftentimes goes above that. Shadows I like to bring up a bit. And then I'll go over to the log and just drop just the shadows to add a little contrast back in. And it's a before and after for the outside. I'll grab a still to create the LUT there. Not a LUT, but it's just like a copy of the settings. And then I'll just use that. And then adjust as needed, but I'm pretty happy with that. That works. I want it a little warmer. That works. A little greener. And I'll bump up. Oh, I'm still in the log. That's why it's acting weird. I'll bump this up a little bit, pull the shadows down a little bit, give it some of that good contrast, warm it slightly. That's good. That's good. That's fine. Okay, let's do this one. Let's do inside. Now I grade inside differently. I'll create a second node. First node is for noise reduction. I come over to noise reduction here and go to temporal, choose 3, and I will play with that, and I watch my scopes here, and you can see when it stops affecting the scopes. So right about there, so I got 12.4, and then if I need more than that, I'll come over to Luma, and let's see how much Luma affects. It does quite a bit, but it's going to start degrading the image quite a bit. So I'm going to keep it about 14 and then change from faster to better. That'll keep a lot of the details. Now, you do noise reduction in Resolve on the first node, because if you do it after that, Resolve processes everything in order of the nodes being connected. So if I did noise reduction after I color graded, it's reducing noise on something that's already been changed, and it doesn't have as much information. So do it on the first clip where it has the most information. Then over here, if we want to add a LUT, go to the wide gamut, and then we'll go over here and start playing. Bump that up, I'll pull the highlights down, bump the shadows up a little bit. We're going to pull just the shadows down to add back some of that contrast in the blacks. Add a little saturation. Go back here and add a little mid-tone detail, a little bit of contrast. And there we go. We still have window detail. That one has a shade on it, so it is what it is. And it's just playing a little, it plays slower when you add the, let me see, it's 13 frames a second when you add the noise reduction, because the, let's go back. This first temporal noise is pretty minimal. It doesn't really affect the playback too much. The spatial noise gets much more in depth and always slows it way down. So I save color grading to the end. I'm pretty sure that's how everybody's workflow goes. But anyway, I've created this. I like this grade. Grab that still. Go to my next. Apply that. And then I can color grade this. There's too much magenta, so I'll just add some of that and I'll warm it up a little bit. That looks pretty natural. And there we go. And that is how I set up the project. And that's basically how I go about a quick edit. Again, with the music, it would help. With the gimbal, it would help. But you get the idea. And the first lens I used was the 10 to 24 XF. And then the second is the 35 XF. I just kind of switched back and forth. And then I would go to export when I'm all done. And what I've been doing is doing ProRes master, because Resolve does not export H.264 to the quality that I want. It's actually pretty crappy, or H.265, either one. So I'll export a master clip to ProRes. I always change my advanced settings, the color space tag, since everything I'm doing is viewed online. I change my color space to sRGB and the gamma tag to sRGB. I leave all of that. Before we export, we'll go back to our project settings and change this to 4K. Since I shot in 4K and I want to deliver in 4K, you can check on your timeline. Right click, timeline settings. Yep, that's going to be use project settings, so that's at 4K already. Then I'll go to the deliver and go to ProRes, and then I'll set this to the sRGB and the sRGB and add that to render queue. Now when that renders, after it's done, I'll throw it in Handbrake. It's free, open source, and then I'll use Handbrake to convert from, actually, let me just throw it out here. Let's see, documents, desktop, Resolve tutorial. I'll just say master there, add render queue, render all. Then when it gets to the noise reduction, that's what starts really sucking some energy. And I'm drinking, I love coffee. Today I'm drinking fresh roasted Sumatra. And it is delicious. Okay. And normally for the first timeline I would call it branded, and I would add the realtor's logo and text for the what's it called? Text for the address in there. And then I'll create a second timeline. I'll duplicate the first one after I've already edited everything, got the color grading done, it's a final product. I'll go back to my edit back here, right click, and I'll duplicate, and I'll rename this one unbranded. And then I'll just delete all the text information and export that as well for the MLS, so that they have a version they can use on social media and a version they can use on the MLS. Okay, we've already exported all of that. Finish this. Let's close that. And we're gonna bring up Handbrake. And let's go to desktop, resolve, select your master. And if we look at the master file, let me see. The master file is 3.8 gigs for just that little short bit. But it's the ProRes 422HQ. It's awesome quality. Nice, clean, crisp, clear. Now I'm looking up at the top, and I could have done some noise reduction on the exterior stuff. I'm still learning the XT3, what I've got to do with it, but anyways, so that's the master. Here, I've already got a preset set up for 4K 23.976. Select that. Browse location. Let's go there, and we'll rename it Final. And start rendering. And here it's going to take that and change it. I changed the format from ProRes to MP4. So it's compressed, much smaller, but this compression looks way better than what Resolve puts out. So anyway, that'll be done, and that's it.